I knew something was off the second I saw the golf cart parked across my driveway, two rent-a-cop security guys leaning on it like they owned the place. I rolled down my window and raised an eyebrow. "You're blocking my drive," I said. One of them, a tall guy with mirrored sunglasses and a sunburned nose, held up a hand like he was stopping traffic. "HOA orders. Lake access is temporarily restricted." I blinked. "That's my dock, my lakefront. What are you talking about?" He didn't budge. "HOA president said no one's allowed near the lake for safety reasons. She said you'd try to argue." I leaned back in my seat and laughed, because I knew exactly which dictator in a cardigan was behind this: Gloria Renfield. Middle-aged, bleach blonde, and self-appointed queen of the Willow Ridge Homeowners Association. She once tried to fine me for having non-compliant birdhouses. I gave the guy a nod. "Tell Gloria Renfield to check the property lines. And maybe the water rights deed while she's at it." He looked confused. I pulled into the grass and drove around them anyway. Now, here's the thing. My name's Darrell Benson. I inherited this house from my uncle, who built it back in the 70s before Willow Ridge was even a twinkle in a developer's eye. And what no one in the HOA ever bothered to figure out was that our private lake. It exists because of a dam, my dam. Literally, I own it. The land it's on. The flow rights, maintenance responsibilities, all of it. The HOA's property line stops 50 feet before the dam even begins. They treat the lake like it's part of their kingdom, but legally, I'm the one holding back the water. I parked by my boathouse and walked down to the dock. Sure enough, there were new signs staked into the ground, temporarily closed by order of HOA. One was zip-tied to my fence. That's when I saw her. Gloria was strutting down the gravel path with a clipboard and one of her infamous pastel sweater vests. Her lips were pursed so tight I thought she might shatter her teeth. "Darrell," she said, voice all syrup and fake manners, "you can't be here. We've had reports of unsafe algae levels. Until we get a full environmental review, the lake's off limits." "You mean my lake?" She crossed her arms. "Don't be difficult. The community needs to be protected. We're trying to avoid liability." I chuckled. "Funny, I don't remember signing anything that gave the HOA jurisdiction over my land." "Oh, please," she scoffed. "You're part of Willow Ridge. That means the common areas belong to the HOA. You can't just waltz in here and do what you want." "I can when it's my shoreline." She clicked her pen like she was about to write me a citation. "Don't push me, Darrell. We've already filed a notice of violation. If you don't comply, we'll escalate." I stepped closer. "You do realize I control the dam, right?" That shut her up for half a second, then her eyes narrowed. "You're bluffing." "Nope, and if you keep playing games, I'll have no problem draining the entire lake for maintenance." Her jaw actually dropped. I turned and walked back to my truck. If she wanted a war, she was about to get one. And I had paperwork, historical land records, and a very motivated attorney ready to go. Gloria Renfield had no idea who she was messing with. The next morning, I was already 3 cups of coffee deep when I heard a metallic clatter outside. I stepped onto the porch, just in time to see 2 men in bright yellow vests rolling a chain across my boathouse gate, complete with a padlock the size of a grapefruit. I called out, "You want to explain what you're doing before I call the sheriff?" One of them, a guy with a shaved head and a clipboard tucked under his arm, turned toward me with a practiced smile. "We're just securing the area per HOA directive. Safety protocols. You do realize this is private property?" He didn't answer. Just motioned to his buddy, who clicked the lock shut and gave it a tug for good measure. I pulled out my phone and started recording. "Name and ID numbers, now." Neither of them responded. They got back in their utility cart and drove off without a word. I didn't waste time. I called my cousin, Trina. She's a property rights attorney who once buried a county zoning board under so many injunctions they held a closed-door meeting just to surrender. She picked up on the second ring. "You finally ready to sue the sweater mafia? They padlocked my boathouse this morning." There was a pause. "That's trespassing and unlawful seizure. I'll swing by after court. Don't touch the chain yet." "I want photos." By noon, Trina was there with a Nikon camera and a document folder thicker than a phone book. She walked the perimeter, took photos of the signs, the lock, the screw holes where they'd drilled into my fence post, and even the tire tracks from the cart. "Gloria's overstepped," she said, flipping through the folder. "Way over. They've claimed easement rights over property they don't own and enacted restrictions not authorized under their charter. Can we do something about it? Oh, I plan to. But first, let's make sure the sheriff's department understands there's a criminal element here." That afternoon, Deputy Malden pulled up in a dusty SUV. He was a straight shooter, known for telling both sides to knock it off when disputes got out of hand. I'd met him once before when a neighbor tried to file a noise complaint over my chainsaw. He'd laughed and said, "It's 10 in the morning on a Saturday, let the man cut wood." This time he took one look at the chain and frowned. "They lock that themselves," witnessed it. "Got it on video." Trina handed him a printed still from the footage. With the time and date stamped clear as day, he scratched his jaw. "You file a formal complaint yet?" "Doing it now," she said. "We're also filing a temporary restraining order against the HOA board's enforcement arm." Deputy Malden nodded. "They got no legal right to restrict access on your land." "I'll file the incident report and forward it to the county prosecutor." By that evening, the padlock was off not by my hand, but by order of the sheriff's department. They even sent over a crime scene tech to photograph the bolt holes and collect the lock for evidence. I thought that might be the end of it. But no, Gloria doubled down. The next morning, I came outside to find a laminated notice taped to my front door. "Violation: unauthorized water use." Beneath it was a fine $500 and a warning that continued infractions may result in legal action and revocation of community privileges. Trina read it and laughed. "They're pretending they can tax you for your own water. She's getting desperate. She's getting sued." I spent the rest of the day gathering every document I had. My uncle had kept meticulous records, and I now had deeds, maintenance logs, engineering assessments, and a certified copy of the original water rights purchase. It was all airtight, but I wasn't the only one Gloria was targeting. That evening, a neighbor named Felix knocked on my door. He was a retired firefighter who'd lived at the edge of the lake for 25 years. "They sent me a notice too," he said, holding up a paper. "Said my canoe rack violates shoreline visibility codes. I don't even know what that means." Trina scanned it and raised an eyebrow. "It means they're trying to bully anyone who might side with Darryl." "Guess I'm a target now," Felix muttered. "You're a witness," I corrected. The next morning, we held an impromptu meeting at my garage. Trina printed out 50 flyers. "Know your rights, HOA overreach, and what you can do." Felix brought coffee and folding chairs, and within the hour, we had over 30 people crowded around my workbench while Trina explained the limits of HOA power. Turns out I wasn't the only one who'd been harassed. Martha from Lot 12 had been fined for a wind chime. Curtis, who worked night shifts, said security had tried to tell him he couldn't park his car in his own driveway. "They're pushing everyone around," Trina said. "And the only reason they've gotten away with it this long is because no one pushed back." Well, we were pushing now. Word spread fast. The next day, Channel 7's local reporter showed up. I gave an interview in front of the lake, holding up the lake deed and pointing out the dam in the background. Gloria refused to speak on camera, but issued a written statement claiming community safety and misunderstandings over shared resources. That was the moment I knew we had her cornered. The county prosecutor called Trina 2 days later. The lock incident, officially classified as criminal trespass and property interference. They were opening an investigation into the HOA board's practices, especially their use of private security to enforce non-binding policies. Then came the bombshell. One of the security guards, the one with the sunburned nose, quit and came forward. He handed over internal memos from the HOA, including one that stated, "Use any means necessary to restrict lake access until we can negotiate control." negotiate control. They were trying to create a legal precedent by blocking access and fining me into submission. If I complied, they'd claim it was de facto acceptance of HOA authority over the lake. Problem was, I didn't comply. Trina filed for injunctive relief, and the circuit court granted it within 72 hours. That meant the HOA was legally barred from issuing any further directives about the lake, my property, or anything within 100 feet of the shoreline. Gloria tried to rally support at the next board meeting, but it blew up in her face. Half the room showed up wearing pins that said, "I stand with the dam owner." Felix brought a poster board of the lake deed. Martha read a statement about intimidation tactics. Gloria tried to shout them down. She failed. A recall petition started that same week. By the end of the month, over 70% of the community had signed it. The board was dissolved. Gloria resigned before the vote, and me. I got a handwritten apology from the interim president, along with a fruit basket and a request to speak at the next meeting about proper boundary enforcement. I told them I'd bring maps, and a projector and Trina. The morning after Gloria's resignation, I was ankle-deep in weeds by the culvert intake, clearing out debris with a rake, when I heard tires on gravel. A city truck pulled up Public Works from the emblem on the door, and a woman in steel-toed boots stepped out, clipboard in hand, her expression unreadable. "You Darrell Benson?" she asked, peering over the rim of her sunglasses. "Depends," I said, swatting away a mosquito. "You here to fine me for having too many frogs?" She cracked a grin. "No, I'm here because someone filed an anonymous report claiming you've been tampering with a watershed structure without a permit." I wiped my hands on my jeans. "Let me guess." The report came from someone with a vendetta and a newly empty board seat. She didn't deny it. "Mind if I take a look?" "Go ahead, just watch your step." The bank's soft this time of year. She followed me down the slope, eyeing the concrete structure, the spillway monitoring gauge, and the signs of regular upkeep. I showed her the maintenance log, complete with stamped inspections from the last 12 years, including the county's own hydrology division. "I haven't altered a thing," I said. "Clearing leaves isn't illegal," she nodded. "You're fine, but I'll log the complaint and note it as unfounded. Just be aware someone's still trying to make trouble." I already knew that. Later that afternoon, I got a call from Curtis, the night shift guy who'd come to the garage meeting. His tone was tight, urgent. "You better come see this," he said. "There's something going on behind Lot 43. By the drainage basin." I drove over and parked in the alley behind the row of townhouses. Curtis met me by the fence, holding up his phone. "Caught it on my security cam last night. 2 guys in HOA jackets digging near the old overflow pipe. No lights, no permits. They brought equipment in the back of their truck and left around 3 in the morning. I watched the grainy footage. They weren't just digging, they were installing something. "Where's that pipe lead?" I asked. He pointed toward the trees. "Used to connect to the auxiliary bypass. The one that feeds the retention pool before hitting the lake, but it's been sealed off since the early 90s. I climbed the fence and followed the tree line. Sure enough, the ground had been disturbed. Sod rolled back. A trench dug with precise angular cuts. And at the bottom, half buried in mud, was a black PVC valve with a locking cap, freshly installed. Someone had tapped into the bypass. Curtis looked it over. "Why would they touch this after all these years?" I didn't answer. I was already mentally tracing the flow path. If they opened that valve during a storm, it could redirect water into the HOA greenway, flooding the easement and cutting off access to the east bank. And if the area flooded, they could declare it a hazard zone and lobby for emergency authority, possibly even demand control over the dam under the guise of public safety. It wasn't just sneaky. It was sabotage. I called Trina. She didn't hesitate. That's felony-level tampering. Interfering with a water control system without jurisdiction. That's prison time. We're going to need a hydrologist and a judge. Within 12 hours, we had both. Dr. Marquez, an independent civil engineer, came with a pressure gauge and a flow map. He confirmed it. The bypass tap wasn't accidental. It was engineered to reroute water away from the lake and toward the HOA common ground. This wasn't amateur work, he said. Someone knew exactly how to avoid detection. Probably figured the seasonal rains would mask the pressure shift. Trina filed an emergency injunction and submitted the findings to the district attorney's office. They moved fast. A judge signed a warrant by sundown. By the next morning, county investigators in reflective vests were digging up the trench and cataloging every inch of pipe. But the real surprise came when they traced the equipment order. Turns out, the valve and fittings had been purchased using the HOA's operating account. The receipt listed maintenance supplies and was signed off by none other than Bruce Kettle, the former vice president, who'd quietly stepped down weeks before Gloria resigned. The DA held a press conference the following day. I watched from my porch as the news vans rolled in and reporters swarmed the HOA clubhouse. Charges were announced: criminal conspiracy to manipulate water infrastructure, misuse of association funds, and unlawful construction without a permit. Bruce was arrested that afternoon. But the fallout didn't stop there. Investigators seized HOA records and found a slew of shady transactions, payments for consulting, kickbacks to vendors, and even a shell landscaping company registered under Gloria's niece. The entire operation was rotten. With the board dissolved, a temporary management committee was appointed by the county. Felix was named interim chair. First order of business, transparency. They opened the books, held open forums. Residents were invited to ask questions, challenge policies, and propose reforms. No more secret meetings. No more selective enforcement. At the third open forum, I stood up and introduced a motion. Prohibit the HOA from initiating any land use changes without a 2/3 community vote and verified legal review. It passed unanimously. The lake, now fully monitored and protected, became a community asset in the true sense, respected, not controlled. I even agreed to host a summer festival on the shoreline, complete with food trucks and live music. Trina set up a booth to answer legal questions. Curtis rigged up a solar-powered light show over the water, and Gloria she'd vanished from the neighborhood. Her house went up for sale under a different name. Rumor was she'd moved in with a relative out west, away from lakes and HOAs altogether. Weeks later, I got a certified letter addressed to me from the DA's office. Inside was a formal acknowledgement. Without your documentation, vigilance, and refusal to surrender property rights, this case may never have come to light. I taped it inside my garage, right above the breaker box. People still come by from time to time, asking how it started. I tell them it began with a chain across a gate, but really, it started the day someone thought they could turn community into control. They forgot one thing: I hold the dam. I was in the middle of repairing the dock cleats when a county inspector named Delaney showed up with a rolling case, a level, and a badge tucked into the chest pocket of her windbreaker. She was methodical, brisk, and not much for small talk. Got word from the DA's office that I should assess the dam's structural integrity. You mind if I take some readings? Be my guest, I said, standing aside as she unlatched the case and pulled out a laser scanner. She began taking measurements along the concrete lip, marking positions on a folded blueprint. I watched in silence until she paused by the intake channel, her brow furrowing. There's a discrepancy here, she said, pointing to her notes. Flow velocities higher than the readings from last year's engineering survey. Could be runoff, I offered. We had heavy rains 2 nights ago. She shook her head. Not enough to account for this. Something's feeding extra volume into the channel. Mind if I check your upstream gate valves? I led her to the metal housing near the top of the slope. The locks were intact, seals unbroken. But when she opened the pressure readout display, she frowned again. This isn't just extra water. Someone increased the discharge rate. Deliberately? I felt a cold knot settle in my gut. Is it dangerous? Not yet. But if someone's been tampering with flow controls, we're beyond code violations. This could qualify as an act of waterway interference. If the dam breaches, that's not just property damage. That's criminal negligence, possibly worse. She radioed it in and called for a hydrologist from the State Department. I spent the next hour walking the perimeter with her while she photographed every inch of the structure. As we circled back toward the spillway, she stopped dead. A set of fresh boot prints led from the tree line to the rear access panel. She crouched down. Prints are less than 24 hours old. Someone's been back here. I looked toward the woods, half expecting a figure to step out. Nothing but wind through the branches. That evening, I called Curtis to ask if his camera caught anything. He said the system had gone offline sometime after midnight. When I asked if that had ever happened before, he paused. No, never. Not even during storms. I drove straight to the HOA office, which was now being run by the committee. Felix was there, sorting through stacks of old financial ledgers. When I told him what Delaney found, he dropped his pen. I thought we'd seen the worst of it, he said quietly. But if they're still trying to force control, we need to find out who's accessing restricted areas. The new board doesn't even have dam keys. Felix opened a drawer and pulled out a manila folder. I didn't want to mention this without proof, he said, but I found something 2 days ago. Gloria and Bruce authorized a contract with a private engineering firm last fall. Not for repairs, for restructuring assessment. They were planning to reroute the lake's outflow into a man-made channel. Why? To create a second retention pond behind the greenway. If they'd pulled it off, that pond would have been on HOA land. They could have claimed control over both. I leaned against the wall, stunned. They were trying to duplicate the lake, manufacture a water system they could regulate. Exactly. And if they'd reduced the dam's flow rate, the lake level would have dropped just enough to shift the shoreline boundaries. They were trying to shrink your property. I wasn't sure whether to laugh or throw something. Felix continued. We've got to bring this to the DA, now. If they were still working with that firm, someone might be continuing the plan on their own. We met with the district attorney the following morning. Her office had already opened a second case file, but the new evidence elevated things. She assigned a task force to investigate all subcontractors associated with the HOA in the past 12 months. That's when they found it. One of the subcontractors, Linden Environmental Services, had billed the HOA for strategic flow analysis 3 months ago. The signature on the invoice. Bruce Kettles, dated after his resignation. A warrant was issued for his personal records. What they found blew the whole thing wide open. Bruce had been working with a consultant named Arlen Voss, a retired engineer with a revoked license. Voss had been blacklisted for falsifying environmental impact assessments. He was the one who designed the bypass tap behind Lot 43, and he didn't stop there. Investigators found blueprints on his hard drive outlining a covert redirection system, a network of underground valves, hidden junctions, and disguised outflows meant to slowly siphon water from the lake over a 6-month period. The intention was to dry out part of the shoreline subtly, then claim it was no longer part of the lakefront. They were going to redraw property boundaries by manipulating the terrain. The state attorney filed charges against both Bruce and Voss within the week: conspiracy to defraud, criminal environmental tampering, and malicious interference with registered water rights. Voss was extradited from another county. Bruce was arrested again. But the real storm broke when the media got wind of it. Local news ran a special report titled "The Lake Deception." And suddenly, our quiet little neighborhood became a cautionary tale for every HOA in the state. Residents from other developments started showing up at our meetings, asking how we'd done it. We didn't sugarcoat it. We told them the truth. It took proof, persistence, and a community willing to look past lawn colors and mailbox paint to stand together. The State Water Board sent a full team to inspect the dam. They declared it stable, confirmed my ownership, and issued a permanent injunction banning any third party from tampering with the structure under penalty of felony prosecution. Trina helped file a civil suit on behalf of the residents affected by the HOA's schemes. The settlement was substantial. The funds were used to create a community legal defense reserve independent from the HOA budget. Felix and the new board rewrote the bylaws from scratch this time with resident input at every step. The final version eliminated unilateral enforcement powers, required public notice for any land use changes, and mandated third-party audits for all spending. As for me, I installed a new motion-triggered camera system around the dam and the boathouse. Not because I was worried, but because I was done being surprised. One afternoon, Delaney stopped by again, this time in jeans and a fleece, carrying a cooler. "You like perch?" she asked. "Only when it's not swimming near sabotage valves." She laughed and handed me a fillet wrapped in butcher paper. "You kept this place from turning into a disaster, thought you earned a decent dinner." We sat by the dock, rods in the water, watching the sun dip low. "I've inspected dams all across this county," she said. "Never seen one get used like a chess piece before." "Most people forget that water's power doesn't come from pressure," I said. "It comes from patience. You just have to know when to release it." She grinned. "Sounds like you just described yourself." I didn't argue. Later that evening, Felix called. The recall vote on the final remaining board member had passed unanimously. Every last remnant of Gloria's regime was gone. A week after that, a letter arrived from the state attorney's office. It confirmed the full resolution of both criminal cases, along with a formal commendation for exceptional civic stewardship in the preservation of critical infrastructure. I framed it, not for vanity, for history. Because long after the headlines faded and the lawsuits closed, the lake remained calm, steady, unmoved by the chaos that once tried to claim it. And on its shore stood a dam, protected not by laws or locks, but by a community that finally remembered who it really belonged to.